I love it.
I'm a big fan of yours, man. I'm a big fan. Sign this.
Well, like I said, I appreciate it. It's an honor to have you here. I'm Rebirth. I go by Rebirth. That's Fat Jesus right there. And of course, we got Brian here for the hour. Intelligent and very honest and passionate individual when it comes to Mars. And I definitely am honored to have this discussion with you. So thank you and welcome to be here.
Wow, man, that's a heck of an intro.
I'm gonna be hitting a couple of difficult words that I don't even know. We're gonna try and sound smart today.
Before I hit record, I said, I've been interested in this because of the face of Mars. You have a blog article on that. I was reading that. I just got freshened up on that. And I just read it again. Very interesting article. That's what got me interested in Mars, is that right there. And there's this whole conspiracy idea that people go with, that it was lights, it was this, it was that. But it's a face on Mars. So you can't deny that, right? I mean, you can see it. I mean, if you go to an art show or a museum and you see that on the wall somewhere, you're going to say, hey, that's a face, right? Might not be the most pristine type of face looking, but you'll be able to look at it and be like, yeah, that's a face, right? So yeah, it's amazing how we got to this far. And then, me studying mythology and so on and so forth, I learned about, possible places people living on there. So let me ask you, what got you into Mars? What got you into wanting to put your passion into this?
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for the question. And you brought up the face on Mars, which I think was a lot of people's entry point into this topic of there maybe being a previous civilization on the red planet. Like, why would there be this structure that looks kind of like a face? So, this is something I saw on the internet, let's say 25 years ago, and said, oh, isn't that haunting? But, and even though there was a Mars community, a Mars researcher community back then, it just wasn't what it is today. So I guess you could fast forward to 2022 when someone recommended a Graham Hancock book to me. You guys know Graham Hancock, right?
Yeah, I met him.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, over at a convention in Arizona.
Wow. So, what was it? Excuse me. Fingerprints of the Gods. And I didn't have any context for it. I started reading it and thought, I wasn't sure if it was fiction or not. So I'm like, oh, so that opened me up to this whole area of research that we're, currently looking at today, which is the alternative way of interpreting what these ancient megalithic structures are around the world, which is completely fascinating. A lot of attention is focused on Egypt and the pyramids there. As it turns out, Graham Hancock actually has another book. After I got done reading, he's got plenty of books, but what I'm saying is he's actually got a book on Mars. So after I got done reading this Fingerprints of the Gods, I read his Mars book because I think I was listening to some podcasts and people are talking about structures and artifacts on Mars. I'm like, this can't be real. But then I said, oh, well, look at Graham Hancock's got a book on this. I think it came out in the late 90s or maybe early 2000s, something like that. And in the book, Graham Hancock is talking about the history of discovering microbial life on Mars, as well as photographs which seem to indicate pyramids on Mars. And after reading this, I became deeply unsettled. Because if that's true, if any part of that is true, then what does that mean? What does that mean for us if our next door neighbor had a previous civilization on it that is no longer there? And why are we not getting to the bottom of even just this question about microbial life? So that started one of these rabbit holes, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with what that experience is like. You look into something, you start digging. And the more I dug, the more I asked myself, surely there must be a documentary about this somewhere. And there's definitely YouTube videos, there's definitely blog posts, there's a lot, all this information is already out there on the internet, but I'm like, someone needs to just put it all together, to put all these separate fields of research into one cohesive narrative, because together they tell a very different story of Mars than the one that we've been told by NASA. And I have to credit NASA for doing such amazing technological feats of engineering. They've furthered our study of the universe. They've made a lot of They've made a lot of incredible discoveries as it relates to Mars specifically. The problem is they just don't talk about them. So it provides an opportunity for someone like me to come along who sees this incredible story and just wants to highlight the work of those people actually doing the research, which, in my opinion, I think deserves a whole lot more attention than it's getting. We're talking about life on Mars here.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So,
but after you show your work, do you feel like you wasted your time when NASA disregards it?
No, man. I'll be honest though. I would love to get somebody directly from NASA to sit down for an interview with me, and I've tried. They just said no.
I'm sure they saw it. I'm telling you right now, they saw it. They saw it. They got their ear to the ground, man. They trust me. They've seen it. They have a lot of people in the PR department, everything like that. They have an eye on you. They're a big government, and you're an up and coming. You're big. You're big, and they know that you're coming up. So trust me, they know.
That's very kind of you to say. I think the confirmation that I'm getting with regards to this work, there's this question, and we can go over. Let me just, I guess, for those listeners watching or listening, what we're talking about here involves the study and research, or the evidence for current microbial life on Mars, fossils on Mars, artifacts, ruins, pyramids, and even UFOs flying around today. And I know that sounds incredible, and then we can get into the catastrophe portion of this.
It's not even that far-fetched, because even Congress is talking about it.
It's for people like us. That's right. Even Congress is talking about UFOs here. So we are in the age of disclosure here, which is great. And in my opinion, the whole overall disclosure topic really needs to incorporate Mars, because I think it has a lot to say. And I think it has a whole lot more receipts rather than just reports. So we've actually got tangible physical data that we can point to and show people, and they can take a look at for themselves. So when I report on all this stuff, like I made the documentary. So, it's a feature length, did that, but I've learned so much since I put the documentary out that I felt the need to continue covering it. So I'm approaching it more like, I guess, journalism these days. But when I report on this stuff, when I publish on this stuff, and I get the feedback from folks like yourself, who's like saying, yeah, you know what? We always knew there was something strange with Mars. And, the things that, I'm not discovering these things, but I'm highlighting the work of the people who do. And when you get so many people out there in the public who say, yeah, you know what? That looks strange to me too. That doesn't add up. I'm not buying that narrative anymore, NASA. That gives confirmation for me that we're on the right track of discovery here. There is something to all these anomalies, and that they can't all be explained away with pareidolia, which I'm sure you guys have heard before. This word.
They use that word a lot.
For everything. And no matter what it is, whether it be the face on Mars, or whether it be the square on Mars, two totally different things. Whatever.
I work with tridactyls, and this is in Peru. I don't know if you ever heard of them. And it's the three-finger, three-toe beings. We call them beings and not aliens in Peru. And they have like 13 bodies they've scanned. And I tell you what, man, they are just impressive mummies. And they're mummies from the diatomaceous earth that they're coming from. And I always question, well, have we checked all the other diatomaceous earth to see if they exist anywhere else? Because maybe that's a thing, maybe that's how they bury themselves all over the earth and everything. Maybe this is the Anunnaki. Maybe this is, maybe this is the beings that taught us the math, the science, all this stuff all across the earth. I don't know. This is all a lot of assumption. All I know is that we have physical beings that we dug up. And then here comes the hoaxers. Here comes all these people, the estemic arrogance and all this stuff saying, no, they don't even look human and everything. It's like, why are you trying to compare them to human? They're their own beings altogether.
Yeah,
why do they have to look? Yeah, they're trying to say, oh, they don't even look like apes. I'm like, dude, why do they have to try and look like apes? Maybe they came from Mars. Here we are talking to you. We don't know anything about them. And yet we just discovered them within a 20-year period. And here we are. We discovered Paracas skulls. I mean, we have been studying Paracas skulls for what, more than or almost 100 years. And yet they elongated skulls were discovered like 1,000, 2,000 years. I mean, it's been written in books for 2,000 years, about elongated skulls, people elongating their skulls and doing all that stuff. It's been written in history books and stuff like that. So, I've written down a lot of notes on it. And so it's like, who are they worshiping? Who are they worshiping to elongate their skulls and all that stuff? And then here we are finding these beings that have naturally formed elongated skulls. So, I mean, enough is enough, enough is enough. I mean, I'm already assuming that on Mars, underneath all of that, we're going to find cities, and there is a possibility, and I'm not, one of these people that believe that we evolved from apes. I think we were placed down here, and, to survive the Earth atmosphere because it was toxic. Right now, oxygen is not toxic, but this is toxic. So we had to survive Earth's atmosphere. So we had to mix in with the apes, genetic and everything like that. That's why we have the genetics and everything like that. But we came from Mars. That's what I believe. But that's me. I'm not the scientist. But after watching your movie, oh my God, I feel like I'm part of a small niche society that truly believe. I mean, I thought I was all alone in this whole universe believing this. And now I feel like I'm really part of a group of scientists and people that believe in the same thing. And I really appreciate that. That movie was intense. Thank you.
Dude, that's very kind of you to say. And I think that's the thing that I am trying to do. The activist in me wants to search out the community of this it is a fractured community of Mars researchers, whether they're studying biology or pyramids. They're not talking to each other. And it presents this very fractured nature of this topic of Mars disclosure because there's no unified front. I think that's what I'm trying to do, is that say, hey, look, there is a community out there. They may not be working together, but they're out there. I'm doing my best to try to get people to collaborate and work together and adapt. Some of these older gentlemen with, PhDs, they don't know how social media works. So I sort of have to train them how to do that sort of thing and get them online. I tell them, look, if you're not online, you don't exist. All right. No one cares that you spoke at a conference 20 years ago.
And if you're not loud enough, ain't nobody's going to hear you.
So, Fat Jesus, thank you, because that's the goal of this is to, I believe there are more people out there like you guys who, maybe you guys were hip to this whole Mars thing before I was, and I'm a relative newcomer to this community, but I feel like I want to go hard in the paint on this stuff because we're talking about life on a different planet, which should be the focus of the astrobiology community, and it's not. They want to talk about the icy outer moons of Jupiter and Saturn because they've given up on Mars. So I don't know really how much you want to cover here because there's a lot to tell. we could talk, even just microbes on Mars is a controversial thing among the biology community. They're never going to talk about pyramids,
Yeah,
but there's a whole lot going on there. So
you want to go down the rabbit hole with me? I'll take you down the rabbit hole.
was
If we were an advanced society, I mean, of course, we're not now. We're not an advanced society, not in comparison to Mars. Comparison to Mars, when we were a massive advanced society, maybe a type 1 society, we were probably harnessing the sun and all that stuff, but we just regressed when we came to Earth, right? Our aquarium was probably Europa. That's the rabbit hole. And right now we're sending a satellite to Europa right now to see if there's like aquatic life right now on Europa, on the moon. So what are the chances that we find aquatic life on Europa? I'm going all down. I'm doubling down right now on that satellite, unless NASA goes, oops, the satellite, we lost feet. So
I think that given what I know about the hardiness of extremophiles, that if there is water anywhere in the solar system, even if it's in the form of ice, there is most certainly going to be microbial life there. Whether or not it evolves into something larger, I'm not so sure, because larger life needs more habitable conditions, warmer conditions, and things like that. Europa and Enceladus, they have these icy outer shells, but underneath we have some liquid water, so maybe there's some space whales out there. Who knows? I don't know. But at the very least, if we're talking about microbes, where do microbes live? Where do we find bacteria?
Everywhere.
Europa still has a heated core. So if it's icy on the outside,
right,
it's heated in the inside, meaning that underneath the ice.
If we're just at the bare minimum, this idea where we find bacteria, yes, they are everywhere. And the extremophiles, we have found them in high in the atmosphere, deep in the Earth's crust, in hydrothermal vents, on the outside window of the International Space Station, and directly in nuclear waste. And some can survive directly in ice as well. So these are very harsh, extreme environments. Mars is a picnic compared to some of these things. So why is it so crazy to think, even just the principle of finding microbial life on a planet's surface? And it's not just a belief that it could be there. We actually have data that it is there.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have scientific data, peer-reviewed articles, and analysis of all types of these bacteria that they found out there. I mean, I've been hearing about this since I'm 40. I know you said that we probably known about it probably longer. I think we're all probably about the same age group. I'm 42. And I've been, like I said, when Mars, the face of
I don't know about you, I'm 20.
When the face of Mars was big, that's when I can't remember how old I was. I know I was a little kid, and that's what got me interested in it. I was like, oh man, it's pretty cool, because I mean, as a little kid, I always thought, is there life outside of planet Earth? I mean, I had a very great imagination. I mean, I thought people lived on Mars, for goodness sake, or not just Mars, but the moon. You know what I'm saying? So I thought, of course, when I heard that, the face of Mars and so on and so forth, and that it was almost as perfect as Earth at one time, and then it just, the planet died out for whatever reason and whatever. And even I think back in the 90s or probably early 2000s, they said they was going to try to terraform it. There was actually a movie, I can't remember, a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger where they actually did that. I can't remember what it was called for some odd reason, but it's an old school movie. It's a weird movie.
Total Recall.
Yeah, there you go.
Total Recall.
Yeah, when they did that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's about the round time when I thought, like, there's life on Mars. You know what I mean? And then like I said, I follow the mythologies. And it's really hard to determine who's right and who has the right interpretations, because everybody reads, the writing differently based on, you know, the pictographic script and so on and so forth. So I don't really like to try to get into the argument of that. But the idea that there are some texts that says that people came from Mars or individuals came from Mars is actually in the text. Matter of fact, I'm really big on the Anunnaki, the Anuna, and I don't believe everything about them that some people believe in, like the, you know, the ancient alien part stuff. But there is text in the Hittite text about a Lelu in there, and a Lelu's face is supposed to have been the one that's on Mars, as far as the mythology side. Now, like I said, the interpretation, and some people will say yay or nay, but the point is that that is a mythological story that's being told even today. So Alelu's face is supposed to be on the Mars, and that's where I get the idea from and the understanding, and that's why I believe. And then you have this little, you know, the depictions of like people being like almost like comet or meteor-like type rocks or something like that, or capsules or something like that, and they're coming into Earth and they're seeding the Earth and stuff like that, and they're supposed to be coming from a perfect other side planet and stuff like that. So it's all this stuff plays a part with the evidence, because not only do you have the traditional oral stories, which is now called mythology, you have not just religion, depending on the type of religion you want to follow, because you have religion from around the world. I'm not just talking about monotheistic Abrahamic faith. I'm talking about them all. You got to think about them all, right? Then you have DNA, not DNA, but analysis of the rocks and the soil and, you know, everything around there, and the idea of, you know, water and stuff like that. The bacteria, how could this be a restart for that? Right? Like, could this actually be a restart? Are we watching evolution in real time right now? We have to remember the revolution is very slow. It's not like you can turn from, you know, bacteria to a human in a couple of million years. No, it just takes a lot of time in between that, right? So are we watching right now in real time evolution and how a planet will become an Earth?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Those mythological texts are not something I'm deeply familiar with, although with my brief interactions with the remote viewers and some of the channelers that I know, or a couple, William and Allison Brown, they do some channeling. They've done some channeling about Mars and the remote viewers, the Stargate program, discussing this idea of there being an ancient civilization on Mars and how that aligns with the mythological texts, where
long ago.
Yep. Yeah, some version of humanity started on Mars and then they left Mars after it was dying planet and came to Earth. You know, I really think there's something to that. That's one of the more difficult sells to the public, you know, and I want to eventually get there myself and understand it a lot better. I am so focused right now on messaging to the uninitiated, the people who know nothing about any of this. I was one of these people, and this is why I guess I feel so strongly about getting the word out about all this research and all the data and all the photographs and all these things like that, because I know what profound effect it had on me. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there who have no idea about any of this stuff, and they assume that because NASA hasn't said anything about this, that's what the narrative is. Yeah. There's nothing to Mars other than geology and weather, which is not true. So I think the larger public, there's a lot of work that needs to get done to message out to the uninitiated, the people who know nothing about this. And on top of that, we kind of have a credibility deficit, meaning that there's so much baggage with Mars, because yes, NASA wants to come out and say the face on Mars is nothing more than a trick of light and shadow. It's just a natural landform. And they're entitled to their perspective. And of course, they want to interpret everything through the lens of geology, and that's fine. That's what they want to do. We can't expect them to have an honest conversation with us about disclosure. But it does not preclude other people, say, for instance, Dr. Mark Carlotto, who did actually publish research papers on the face itself, showing it has quantifiable metrics for determining just how strange it is. beyond it just kind of looking like a face, which is what attracted us to it initially. Its inherent construction exhibits signs of intelligence. And what do I mean by that? I have a whole video on this. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I was waiting for you to say that.
So to break it all down, I'll sum it up here just in a sentence, but to break it all down, you have to watch the extended thing because there's history here that most people have never heard about. But the face itself has internal geometry to it. You may not be able to tell here at a glance, but there's people much smarter than I who have analyzed this structure and have determined through a number of different ways, both looking at its symmetry, its geometric regularity, and what is called fractal analysis, which, if anyone knows anything about fractals are found in nature. Think tree branches, think the river channels, think spirals in seashells, things like this. Nature is highly fractal, okay? This face has a very low degree of fractal properties, meaning it is more likely to be artificial. Say, for instance, this is the way we can tell at a glance the difference between a tree and an airplane, okay? If we're looking at imagery, satellite imagery, we can tell the difference between a tree and a building, let's just say, because buildings and airplanes have low degree of fractal properties. This face has a very low degree of fractal properties. It is completely different than the surrounding landscape.
Wait, Brian. You're saying that this is not some kind of natural formation, that the people that you talk to, professional people that know what they're talking about, that know everything about the architecture, the geometry, that been studying this all their life. They're reaching to the end of their lives. They've been measuring stuff. They know the height, the width, everything, and they have studied this to death. I mean, they have beaten this to death, and they looked at it, they measured it. They're using today's technology, and this is what they come up with, and it's not natural. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, well, that's what Dr. Carlotto and others are saying, and I defer to them. They've got the PhDs, they've got the expertise in aerospace, satellite imagery, and
I'm getting the chickens right now, guy. My hairs are just sticking up right now. How is everybody else feeling right now? Because I got the chickens. Woo! Damn.
And I don't think most people even are aware of this stuff. I don't even, Patchy's just.
What's underneath there? What's underneath there? I want to go there right now and look for the entrance and head down to the Queen's and King's chamber. You know that? I want to go down there with a torch and head down to the Queen's and King's chamber and just look around. Maybe there's an ark, just like Moses pulled out of the, I mean, I just got this energy right now. I just want to go look. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's right.
Man.
What's up. That's what's up. It's like, this is just the face on Mars. So for those people who don't know anything about it, there's a lot more to it than what you know. And for the whole story, I made this 40-minute long video here that encapsulates exactly what I'm talking about. It addresses pareidolia. It addresses quantifiably why this is such a significant feature. Now, what's interesting about this is that, well, there's many things that are interesting about it, but one additional thing that's interesting about this face is that it's 12 miles away from a 5-sided pyramid, which in and of itself is a strange thing to say, because when people hear pyramid, they think 4-sided Giza, Egyptian pyramids. There's so much show and tell with Mars, and to say that we've got evidence of 3, 4, and 5-sided pyramids on Mars. We've got this face. We've got these other structures that look like ruins, and we have Earth analogs to them so we can compare and contrast. And if NASA only wants to say that's just pareidolia, you're just seeing things, I don't see how that's a logical. I think that's a very lazy way to try to debunk all this stuff, because you can't just use one explanation to try to debunk everything when everything looks and feels completely different from all the rest.
That's interesting you said that. So there's a 5-sided pyramid on Mars, There's a four-sided on Earth. Could there be a three-sided pyramid on Venus?
Yeah, man, we need to do. There might
I
be
mean,
some
I've
stuff on
seen
Venus.
the pictures from the Soviet. Um,
Yeah,
the Soviets have taken pictures on Venus. They're the ones who are doing all the groundwork in Venus.
yeah.
And Venus is amazing, by the way. I mean, it's very acidic, but the ground in Venus is just looks like Mars. Honestly, I'm gonna be straight up with you. It's crazy out there in Venus, and there needs to be more. I mean, I can't wait to see if you do a movie on Venus. That would be intense.
Maybe one day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring this up because you have a lot of stuff on your website. I've been going through it slowly but surely, and I like all the stuff that you have on there because you got like these metal beams on there and stuff like that. But this Stonehenge on Mars, this is what's interesting to me. I look at Stonehenge and I'm like, okay, if this is almost if I'm looking at it, it's almost identical, like almost to the T. Like if it was set up this, because Stonehenge was a way for us to monitor the solar system. That's at least that's what people say. Now every other planet would have that, especially if they started at a very archaic time
I
frame,
just had an
what I mean?
idea. Oh my god, I just had an idea. What if the broken pieces on ours is actually the rest of the pieces that are on Mars?
I mean, it
What
could be.
if? What if? What if it's a puzzle? What if?
No, but seriously, these
Bro.
things are made for solar, for monitoring the sky. They were basically clocks. That's what they were, right? So on Mars, it would be the same thing. So my
What
question
if they're
is,
messing with us?
I watched this video, but I don't. You didn't get into like. I want to know if you knew if you know the coordinates of this location and see how the sun will be on that time frame, and see if, because Stonehenge was used for agricultural needs, right? Like there was a certain time to do certain types of things with their plants in their agriculture or prayer. I mean, there was so many different things with the Celtic Druids, of course, but if it was a time clock, so I would think that this would be some type of time clock for Mars, and maybe possibly like an agricultural beginning or ending of some sort, or a hunting period or a praying time, like
Yeah. Let me address a couple of different things. Number one, these discoveries, okay, that you're highlighting here. There are people who have found these things. See, NASA takes these pictures, but they don't publish press releases on them. You don't find these things in the newspaper. You don't find this thing being covered in the mainstream news, which leaves an opportunity for somebody like me to come along and make a big deal about it. But we have to give credit to the actual Mars researchers who are spending their spare time sifting through hundreds, if not thousands, of images looking for strange things. And so let me just highlight a few names here. There's a guy in South Africa. His name is Jean Ward. He does this. Him and I have collaborated a number of times. There's a guy in Colorado. His name is Gary Legier. Okay, I've got some really exciting stuff coming from him very soon, maybe even next week, as early as next week. My partner on the movie, Michael Craig, who's been studying this stuff, has made some fantastic discoveries. The cylinder on Mars that went viral recently, that was discovered by a guy in Israel, Rami Bar-Alan. So there are these people out there making these discoveries, and my goal is to get the public more aware of their discoveries. And I think my contribution is really more in the public relations area and communication and storytelling aspect of this. So I want to give credit to these people. I'm not the one making these discoveries. I'm just the one highlighting their work. That's number one. Number two is that for Stonehenge specifically, first of all, Rebirth, the similarities are obvious. Just a side-by-side comparison. But because one of those stone circles is on Mars, what NASA and academia will tell you is that, well, Rebirth, that's just pareidolia. You're just seeing things.
That's I can't even say epistemic arrogance right there. You know, a philosophical term for overconfidence in one's own knowledge and describes someone who refuses to acknowledge valid information from outside sources.
It seems just like common sense here that these two things kind of look similar. Now, as to what their function is, sure, I think there has been a lot of there's indication that these things were used as clocks or way to track the sunlight and things like that, and that might be true. I'm partial to this other emerging explanation, most notably given by the guy who runs the Land of Chem YouTube channel. His name is Jeffrey Drum. He does a lot of research with the pyramids. I don't know if you guys are familiar with his work, but he basically thinks that the his work demonstrates how these Egyptian pyramids were used not as tombs, but as chemical factories. Okay. Utilizing the power of lightning for a source of energy to produce the chemicals and water pumps through. Okay. I think that guy's really onto something. All right. And he's the one who references what the Giza Plateau to him looks like compelling evidence of a type 1 civilization. One of you guys mentioned that a little while ago about the Kardashev type 1 scale, right? Okay. So, for those people who don't know what that means, it's a civilization that has utilized the entirety of their planet's resources. So imagine if aliens came to Earth a very long time ago, they wouldn't be able to bring their factories with them. They would have to make factories here. And the way you do that with the natural resources available is through the use of stone and lightning. And the stone circles, just like the Great Pyramid, were designed to be lightning attractors. Lightning attractors for the purposes of enriching the soil to make it more fertile to plant crops and to grow things. So yes, either way, whether it be the study of the sun or electrical, electricity gathering, it has to do with agriculture, which makes sense if you're trying to upstart a civilization from just the planet itself, and you don't have your technology to help you do that, like we are all fortunate enough to have today. We've got factories and modern day technology. So what if we're seeing evidence of that here on Mars, these stone circles, of which there are thousands all over Europe and things like that? We see these pyramids all over the place. We're unsure about what they did, but maybe they're, maybe Jeffrey Drum's onto something. And we see the exact same thing on Mars. And if Mars was a blue planet much earlier than Earth, well, why is it so unreasonable to think, given the stone circle evidence and the pyramids evidence that we see on Mars, that life didn't happen there first, and then we can't live on Mars anymore because of global catastrophes we can talk about later. We've got to transport our everything to Earth. So it looks like all of this started on Mars and then came to Earth later, because we're seeing the remnants of the exact same thing, these ancient civilizations here on Earth. We're seeing them on Mars. Mars, to me, this is the way I interpret Mars. I think a lot of people look at Mars like they do Antarctica. It's just this boring wasteland, nothing to see here, a bunch of snow. Okay, what else is there to know? But I think from an American-centric position here, I think Mars is much more like Europe, where American history, I never understood why I was studying British history in high school. I was young and I was a kid and I didn't understand. So I just wish somebody would have told me, hey, Brian, British history, European history is American history. It just started before technically America did. But, America didn't rise out of nothing. We came from somewhere, mostly Europe. All right. Yep. So these ancient cultures in Europe and elsewhere came and they started America's oversimplification, but you get what I'm saying. Same thing happened. We've got evidence of an ancient civilization on Mars, which, yes, maybe the mythological texts are onto something, and all that came to Earth. And here is the direct evidence of that. You can see it for yourself. And I think just given the response from people like you and elsewhere, where they're saying, hey, you know what? We see it too. That tells me that I think we're onto something here, and that NASA's narrative just won't cut it anymore.
You like the idea of a type 1 society. I'm also sharing that I believe, and I've been looking and researching, and I believe I ran into a type 4 society, and And it's as impossible that may be. James Webb Space Telescope spotted and they're studying right now. A lot of people are looking at it and they're scanning the skies and they're rescanning that one area. It's in the Dorado constellation. And I don't know if Rebirth can pull it up real quick. And it's incredible. It has it's not a Dyson sphere, but a Dyson disk. And wow. that's a star and extremely bright. So if I could just bring up, that's going to be the optical, and then if we can just,
yeah, I wanted to say, it's interesting because of the fact when you talked about remote viewing, and you talked about that, and I've read I think her she has 15 books, but I read like 15 books from Dolores Cannon. And Dolores Cannon had wrote these books. She's basically this individual who was a hypnotist and who was like a past life regressive type of person who would, she would just hypnotize people and, tell them their past lives and stuff like that. And then some of the books she talks about individuals coming from like possibly Mars. I can't remember which books because, like I said, she talks like 15 of them. So you have all these different sources that talks about this stuff, right? Like you have, like I said, you have the scientific data that you bring about. You have the pictures, right? And then you have the bacteria, you have all that stuff. Then you have the mythologies, and then you have people who do the remote viewing, like you said, and then you have hypnotists who talk about the same thing and like that there was on Mars prior to this. Matter of fact, there was another book. I did a podcast discussion with this guy named Samuel Chung, and he talks about the Ayuba prophecy, and it's basically this guy that gets abducted by aliens and he takes him to a planet. And in the book it talks about, that there's life in different planets and that Mars is one of them. So you have all these stories, all these myths, you have all these little evidence that talks to Mars. And I wonder, why don't people take this? And we actually, me and Fat Jesus and then another person, we did an episode called what was like AI history and then naysayers. What is the number one thing that you just get really annoyed that somebody asks you that that is top-notch evidence? Like they're saying, give me one piece of evidence that there was life on Mars, and then you give them and they just cannot believe it for some odd reason.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because and I know exactly what it is, but okay, when people say that to me, give me one piece of evidence. One and first of all, before I answer this question, I need to preface this by saying there is a difference between the word evidence and the word proof. People use them interchangeably, but in a court of law, they mean different things. People confuse them. So evidence, I'm using it in the strictest legal sense. Evidence meaning it is suggestive of. Proof means it is conclusive of. Okay? Now, you can have conclusive evidence. There's a spectrum of evidence. There's weak evidence, there's strong evidence, and then there's conclusive evidence. All right? For the people who say, show me one piece of evidence, or sometimes they'll use the word proof. Proof means it has been proven and it is commonly accepted. So that conflation aside, show me one thing, okay? These people can never be convinced. And showing them the one thing won't do it. Showing them 5 things won't do it. The only thing that is going to change their mind is if NASA comes out tomorrow and makes this bold claim. If the president goes out and says, we have discovered life on Mars, we have discovered pyramids on Mars, then people will buy it. Okay? There are some people who just remain so tightly adhered to the common or the conventional narrative from NASA. Look, institutions, rightly or wrongly, people look to them as a source of trusted information. In some cases, they are, but not all cases.
Yeah.
So, But some people think institutions are always right and truthful about things. This is why we have to be fair in our analysis and our critique of NASA, because they have done, the only reason why we know any of this stuff is because of their hard work.
Yeah.
Okay. They have very smart people designing very capable instruments. And dear God, you know, it has furthered our understanding of the Earth, the solar system, the universe. They've done amazing things and have been very, they've produced many great things for us humans here on Earth to enjoy. However, like I said before, they just don't do a great job talking about these things. So, you know, getting back to your question, Rebirth, when I'm talking with somebody and showing them these things, okay, what clearly looks like, for example, a four-sided symmetrical pyramid, and the only thing that's keeping people from saying, yeah, I see it too, is the fact that they know that it's on Mars.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's this, because it's on Mars, that won't allow them to believe that what their eyes are seeing is actually true. And this is my task as communicator, is to try to find out what people are being held up by. And to get to the conversation that we have about pyramids, in my opinion, I think requires us to start from the square one, which is, hey, did you even know that there's water on Mars? Some people don't even know there's water on Mars. Oh. Now, it is mostly in the form of ice, but you have, in my opinion, I think we have to have that conversation with the public first to get them on board with that, because there's a lot of people who've never even heard about the Viking mission from 1976. I was one of them until 3 years ago. Or 4 years ago. I learned throughout this process that there's water on Mars and that we've sent life detection equipment there. I never knew any of that. And I'm sure there's a lot, millions, if not billions of people who don't know that. And I think once we get those people, you know, on board with that, then we can open them up to the next step. Fossils. The next step. Oh,
they said they found fossils, though, or what they might appear to be look like as fossils.
Yeah, and what NASA comes out and says is like, oh, we see this potential. We think it might be maybe a potential evidence of an ancient biosignature. Maybe. And what it's weak sauce relative to what else that they have already discovered that they just don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I don't think they want to talk about it either. I think they're only giving us tip of the iceberg. Like, hey, we found some.
On top of that, they didn't resend another robot to the same location with newer technology to reinvestigate those fossils. They send them off somewhere else to a remote location where there's nothing to find. I think that's what they tell us.
That's what they tell us. I think it's interesting because of the fact that, you know, we spend a lot of money, you know, trying to investigate the place, and then we spend a lot of money trying to get there. You know, Elon Musk is trying to get there, and so on and so forth. Eventually, it's going to come out, and that's actually why you're going to be known as the man for this anyway. And I hate to say it, you know. You know, it's always the greats who don't ever get noticed for what they've done. You know what I mean? It's always it's never the greats. Let me just say that. I'm just going to keep it at that. It's never the greats being seen there, because like I can tell you put your passion in, because I read your blog. I like blogs. I have my own website and stuff like that. I love blogs, so I like reading. I love books. I like reading about it. Like I said, I've read so many different books. I have books about Mars myself on my Kindle. And there's always this idea that, okay, look, it always goes back to, okay, the DNA in humans first, right? Well, a lot of people talk about DNA, but before DNA, it was RNA, right? And that's what we don't understand, but we don't look at that type of stuff. Or people who are knowledgeable on that don't look for that same information on Mars, because they say that our DNA is not from here. That's what they say in quotation marks, right? But if our DNA is not from here, now we need to analyze our RNA and see what that is, and see if we find that kind of
on Mars, because we're going to have some kind of representation, if that, because they say that, you know, everything on Earth is a reputation, you know, humans and all these different types of animals, we have some types similar DNA, but can they trace that RNA? And I know that's not really talked about a lot because that's really hard because they don't get the bones and they can scan it and stuff like that. But Mars has always been some kind of really interesting place for me, just because of the simple fact that, you know, what is the possibility of it happening? Like you said, evidence and proof. You was talking about that earlier. I still say this till this day. I used to say it a lot. I said, and I try to explain it to people this way with evidence. Okay. Evidence doesn't mean that it's 100% fact. It's just saying that there's something subjective that's possibly out there. And how I explain it is that there are criminals and there are people in jail right now for doing a crime, where there are people in jail right now for a crime they didn't commit because there was enough evidence to suggest that they was the criminal that committed that crime. Then 20, 30 years later, enough evidence or more evidence came out and said they weren't the criminal and they weren't guilty of the crime, and they were released. So evidence doesn't suggest that, okay, we need to stop there and that we proved our case. You gave enough evidence to suggest something,
more information.
Yeah. So now when more information came out, you was able to backtrack and say this and that. But the point is that, you know, how would you backtrack pyramids being on Mars, or how would you backtrack, you know, the bacteria? And that's when I would say, like I said earlier, I think it's a start over. You know, each planet was going to start over. And are we watching the evolution of another planet in real time because of this, right? Because the planet was going downhill for whatever reason, and then like every wound, it eventually healed, right? And then,
yeah, I mean, just think about what Earth would look like if it lost its atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know, it would turn to rust. It would start looking red all over, just like Mars. There would still most likely be microbial life scattered throughout the surface. And what would still exist after 500 million years? The Great Pyramids. Okay. They're built out of stone. And if there's not a whole lot of weather that's happening on the planet, there's very minimal erosion that's actually happening. So it might have dust blowing around here and there, but things aren't going to be washed away or eroded down over time. It would start to look like Mars. So yeah, I mean, it just looks like Earth is just the second blue planet of the solar system. It happened second.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to also mention that, you know, I appreciate you guys supporting my efforts and what it is. And you guys get what I'm trying to do here. You know, I wasn't the first to do this. There was a man by the name of Richard Hoagland, who many people have heard that name before, but he was essentially trying to do this starting in the 80s. Mm-hmm. He was a journalist himself, and because NASA wasn't taking all these anomalies seriously, he formed his own Mars investigative team, and he pulled together scientists here and there to actively look at, you know, he pulled together, you know, Brandenburg, Carlotto, Randy Pozas, archaeologists, aerospace, plasma physicists, anthropologists to study this stuff on Mars because NASA wasn't doing it. And, you know, he made great strides in getting the public's attention on all this stuff. Now, that was back in the 80s and 90s. You know, now here we are today. There's a whole new generation of Mars researchers, of experts in their field, taking a look at Mars. It's just that many people don't know about them. So I'm really taking after Richard Hoagland in that respect and trying to...
That's respect, man. I respect
carry, you know, honor his work, because there would be no Mars disclosure if it weren't for Richard Hoagland.
That's, I think I know who you're talking about. Is that the guy that used to be like on CBS or something like that?
It's Richard Charles Hoagland. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Is that his full name?
Yeah.
Richard C. Hoagland. Yeah. I mean, he's a great communicator. He's still with us today. I've talked with him on the phone. I tried to get him in the documentary.
He won a Nobel Prize, right? Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if he won a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, Nobel Prize, IG Nobel Prize for astronomy in 1997. I thought his name sounded familiar.
Oh,
I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
The point is he actually gave a presentation to the UN back in the 80s, or maybe it was like the early 90s or something like that. He was an excellent communicator. He didn't have all of what we have today. We've got now decades more photographs that we can take a look at, a closer, better look at what we had, back in the 70s and 80s. And so my fortunate, coming of age and timing of all of this stuff now allows me to build on their previous work where, they got all this started. Credit mostly goes to him to do that. And now I'm just sort of picking up the carrying the torch for this here, because I think to really communicate with the public these days really requires you to have a strong online presence. You can't be just some anonymous account posting some. There are a few Mars people out there who are taking a look at anomalies and posting things online. I don't know what they look like. I can never hear what their voice sounds like. They have this scary music that accompanies the video, and that just doesn't resonate with people. No. People are funny, fickle creatures. They need to know that this is coming from a trusted source. And that's what I'm trying to do, is say, hey, look, you guys can trust me. First of all, my work is based off of research papers being published in academic journals. It is based off of NASA's own photographs, NASA's own data. And you just package that with, a communicator that can know how to talk to people. You got to meet people where they're at.
I really love the footwork that you've done. All you traveled all over the place, spoke to these individuals face to face, and it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I call it boots on ground. Because I like to go to different museums and stuff like that. So I call it boots on ground. So whenever somebody's going on boots on ground, trying to get information out there to the public and stuff like that, I think that, I commend you on that too, because there's, like I was saying earlier, I don't know. You said earlier when we first started that when you learned about Mars, it was scattered everywhere. That's exactly how I learned about it. Mars information was scattered everywhere. There wasn't one place that I could look. Of course, you can't put everything in one book, but there wasn't one place that I could look at and get a lot of information at one time. I had to go through different places, and it was all over the place. Documentaries, all kinds of stuff, YouTube videos. It didn't matter what it was. But you're compiling this stuff. You have your website, you have your documentary, you're going to these places, you're talking, you're looking at the NASA, videos, the pictures and stuff like that. And I know it at times it could be trialing, and sometimes you can be like, man, this is really rough, this is hard, but I got to stick through it because this is my passion. I know how it is, because when it comes to passion with something, you're always doing it. Like I'm passionate about my studies in mythology and the history in the time frame and stuff like that. So I study every aspect of it, and I'm just like you. I have enough evidence to make an argument on both sides. I can make an argument on what side that you believe and what side that you don't believe, because I have enough evidence for both sides. And I see that you have that too. That's why you're able to counter. And I see you commenting when people ask you questions. That's why I asked you that specific question. And what is that one question for the evidence and stuff like that? And it's so amazing, because not only do you give people evidence, but you also say, hey, look, if you don't believe me, look at this data for yourself. And, people are so quick to comment really quick instead of just saying, hold on, let me take a time out, look at this. And, X is one of the best places that you can do this at. You can bookmark that page. You can have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, look, all right, I'm going to check this back. I'm going to look at this later. I'm going to get back at you. I'm going to bookmark it. Let's have this conversation later. Nobody does that on X. Immediately, as soon as you post something and somebody doesn't agree with it, they counter it right there. And then you say, hey, look at this. And they don't do that. Does that frustrate you to the point where you say, hey, do I need to change my angle, or do you still approach it the same way and do everything the same way? Do you think what you're doing now is still working?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't got much traction on X relative to, let's say, my YouTube channel. I don't know what the secret formula is. The
secret formula is the green room. You have to host green rooms, and people will go in there. It's a lot of boots on ground inside X, and that's the thing. You got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. We've been doing it for a while, and it's
well, yeah. I mean, Rebirth.
That's the key.
Fat Jesus, you're on
Actually,
X.
you're doing the key right now through us.
Well, I was really, I'm like, I took a look at your following Rebirth, and I think you had like 20,000 followers. I'm like, man, that's really impressive. But I think the thing regarding X, what amazes me is people's demonstration of egregious laziness.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is, let's just say I'll make a post online about something, and instead of, I don't know about you guys, but whenever anybody comments on something I've posted, I'm like, I want to know more about this person. I go to their profile, look at what they've posted. Okay, are they crazy nut job? How many? It doesn't matter how many followers you have. I'm interested in the content. Okay, if you're posting legitimate content, it doesn't matter how many followers you have, because there could be geniuses out there who just don't pay a lot of attention on the algorithm and trying to boost their own subscription or subscriber base. So I just assume that people want to do the same for me, but they don't. So they don't look at my account and see, like, my first pinned post is a trailer for the documentary. It's like, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of another person, thinking, what makes this Brian guy, what gives him any credibility on the matter? Is he just pulling stuff out of his ass? Like, and I'm like, guys, all you got to do is just click through. I've got a teaser right there at the top. If you take 60 seconds to look at it, I've got a whole website with more information than you'd ever care to look at, because it's just so overwhelming once you see all the papers I've got linked on there. I've got the documentary. I've got hours and hours and hours on my YouTube. It's like, but people, they don't even look at that.
Yeah, nobody looks at. You know why people think that you are? Because we live in a society that does that all the time. People are always assuming. They're always sitting on their toilet, always writing things. They don't do boots on grounds like you. You do the classic move, man. You're the guy. They're jealous. That's what it is. It's jealousy.
I think that plays a part, because they can't follow their passion. I think that is a lot. You mentioned like my followers and amount. I built that all of just being who I am. I know exactly who I am. I'm very authentic. I'm very authentic. I'm not the type of person that would tell you, hey man, that's a nice looking car, when you say, hey man, I just bought this car, isn't it nice? I'm gonna look. If it's ugly, I'm gonna be like, bro, that I wouldn't drive it. If it's nice for you, it's okay. But I'm gonna be honest, you know what I mean? Because that's what you would expect from somebody, right? Like, because if they can lie about the smallest thing like that, then think about when it becomes something big. So I'm very authentic, and I've learned that there's a group of you'll always find your tribe. I think it took me a while. Actually, just the last 8 months that's when my following went up, and it was only because I was promoting my book a lot. Like, I was hardcore promoting my book a lot. Like, that's all I did was just promote my book, and and you said what helped me out, and it took me a while to understand this. I don't have a college degree in anything. I read from PhD recipients. I read from anybody that has a college degree. I read from people who are just regular people, whoever it is. I just read books. That's all I do is read. And all I do is share what I've read. I mean, you can go through my X account and you'll see all I do is share what I've read. I do my commentary and whatever.
This man, his wife is about to move him out of the house because he has his own damn library.
Yeah, I do have a big ass library, and but my credentials for what I know is my social media, and that's kind of crazy to say, because I don't have a PhD. I don't have a college degree. I don't have an associate's or nothing like that. I was in the military, and that was that's as far as I could say that I did. I have some college and stuff like that. But if you go through my account, you will see that I share what I've read. the book that I read it from and who it was, and that's it. And then I make my decision off of what I've read. And then I also have a lot of podcast discussions with people and talk to a lot of different people and get information so I can understand why other people believe what they believe. And I feel like that from what I've encountered just through this journey is that people want to believe things that make them feel good. So if they're, and I hate to say it because what I like to do is talk about is mythology, it goes into religion. Religion won't allow some people to believe that there was life on Mars, or
the occasional massage. Come on.
Yeah. Or there won't be bacteria or anything like that on there, right? Because Earth is supposed to be the only place. So, and you're going to fight that battle with the religious people. And then you got the people who want to be in your position, who want to be known for their work, right? You're producing work, but they want to be known for it, right? And they make the accounts that are, anonymous and stuff like that. And I've seen some people steal some of your posts. I'm not sure if you ever caught that or not, but I've seen some.
Oh yeah, I can't freaking stand that shit.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. That I know that it makes you mad because they don't give you the credit that you deserve, and it's sickening.
And they don't even put your name on it either. They just repost it, and nobody even knows where it comes from. You would have to wait for the fans to put down, oh, this actually came from so and so.
Yeah, and I think it's less about stealing from me, stealing, but and it's more about picking from okay. What has to stop is this. I'm going to highlight. I'm a famous X account. I have many followers, and I'm gonna pick from the Mars community these things that I find interesting and post it like I'm the one who found it. Right? Mm-hmm. No. There's real people who found this stuff who need to be credited for the work. They're the one putting the hard hours of finding these anomalies. You don't get to take the credit for that. Okay, and I'm going to call that shit out because that. These Mars researchers deserve our support for as much as they do. They dedicate their lives daily looking at this stuff for our benefit. The least we can do is acknowledge their contributions. You don't get to post it like you found it. Yeah. So we and that is one of my goals here, is to try to draw attention to this community so that the already influential accounts that don't need any more followers to be just fine, they need to start sharing that. There are those who, here's how I put it, there are those that retweet. The most egregious example of this is that there are some accounts that I've seen that on a daily basis, if not hourly basis, are retweeting their own tweets because they think they're so self-important. Okay? They're thinking, oh, my content's the best. I'm going to retweet myself all day long. No joke. I'm not exaggerating on this. Okay. And then there's my philosophy is, look, I'm not going to retweet myself. That's stupid. I'm going to retweet others. Okay. Who I want to support, who I think deserve
That's what I do.
More, better attention on their stuff. I have my own path, and I obviously want to be successful with what I'm doing. But for me to do that, I feel like I want to take others along with me. I need to highlight it is about the community here. It's not just about me. The only way this works is if the public understands that there is this community. It can't just be the one guy talking about Mars, because then that's crazy. Oh, there's that Mars guy. He's got these beliefs. No, it's a whole community of people. And the more people understand that, I think Mars disclosure will get better traction, like the UFO disclosure topic is today. There's everybody and his brother's looking at UFOs these days. The same thing needs to happen with Mars. And I argue that there's an incredible opportunity now to highlight the work of these Mars researchers and these anomalies that they're finding. Because look, every week you can tune into the Mars channel here and find something new to look at with your eyes. There's a new artifact, there's a new anomaly, there's a new structure that you may not have seen before. And what do we get with UFOs? I'm going to throw shade at UFOs right now, okay? We get a lot of reports. oh, someone said this that might have happened in the past, and maybe there's some truth to it, but I can't see it with my eyes. I don't want to see another congressional report or congressional hearing where they're talking about this, that, and the other. No, we can't show it to you. Well, guess what? Mars has a lot we can show you. It arguably has more legitimate photos of UFOs than have been released over the past 5 years, leaked or whatever. This gimbal UFO that gets so much attention, this gimbal UFO video footage that was released by the military. We've got gimbal UFO type looking things on Mars, and a half dozen of these things right now that look exactly the same. And the only reason why, and it's so funny because even the UFO community doesn't want to take Mars seriously. Even with like there's this UFO crossover. We've got photos of UFOs on Mars, good quality stuff. It's not an imaging artifact. It's not a cosmic ray burst. It's not dust on the lens. It is something that was physically photographed in the sky. And it looks just like the thing that's found in the gimbal UFO video footage that is so famous. And like, hello, guys. You're interested in UFOs. Well, guess what? It's not only happening on Earth. It's happening
everywhere. Yeah. That's why I say people don't work together. People don't know how to work together. First of all, I always say this. If I don't like you, I can still sit in this room with you and gain that information that you got. I want that knowledge. I want that information. I don't care what our personal beef is. I want that information. And that's where it starts, is everybody has this ego that, oh, I got to be this, I got to be that. Or, this doesn't, I didn't come up with this theory, so it's not right. That's where it all boils down to, is ego. Like, I really feel like, look, I honestly, truly believe what you're doing is great because of the simple fact that everything that I've came across mythologically, scientifically, folklore, it doesn't matter what it is, science fiction, it all talked about life on Mars. And you're right. The people who are putting these hours into this deserve the credit. The reason why I give you credit is because you're giving credit to everybody else. You're making sure when I give you credit, you're giving credit to the people that deserve it. And that's how it should be, because I only know of you, really. I've heard of all the other people, but I've never really followed them. You're on social media. And just like you said earlier, social media is important. I mean, you can't get anything across to anybody without social media. And you have to use social media to your own personality in your own way. Not everybody can do things the way you do it, or I do it, or Fat Jesus do it, or anybody else that does it. Everybody has their own personality. That's why everybody has their own group of followers. Now it's up to the responsibility of the people who want to share that knowledge to everybody to get together, whether you like them or not. So if there's people who are critics of yours that don't like you, at the bare minimum, sitting at the table and saying, hey, look, man, let's have a discussion about this. Let's come up with 5 to 10 different things that we feel like we need to talk about and talk. And I know you would do it because you don't know me from anything. But I came out and asked you for a podcast discussion. You said, sure. So if I could do it, I'm pretty sure the people who are critics of yours, who want, solid evidence and understanding of what you believe in, can say, hey, look, Brian, hey, man, I don't believe what you say, but can we have a conversation about this? And I'm sure you would do that, but nobody does that. Everybody wants to hit you with the left and the rights and don't just want to say, hey, look, man, let's just have a conversation. You can put all the punches you want in the future or after that, but dang, I mean.
Talking about critics, there's one person that came up on YouTube and started talking about something crazy, that they were saying that that NASA is hiding, and they're hiding some type of truth, that they're going down there with with the cameras on the rovers, that every rover that they send down there has a red filter on the cameras. You heard about that? And so that every single time they do a video, everything is red every single time. And in reality, and this is what they're saying, I'm just listening, and I don't try to believe everything everybody says. I just listen to everybody, what they say. So they're saying that the skies are blue and the ground is different. It just looks like Earth. Everything looks like Earth on Mars. That's what they're saying. Have you come across something like that as well?
Oh, yes, that's the case. In fact, every 2 to 3 weeks, me and a nice group of people, we're doing this live stream a Mars disclosure live stream. I don't know if you saw any links to that recently, but we just had one on Sunday, and we talked about this specifically and showed some examples. Yes, Mars does have, it does not have a red sky. It has a blue sky. In fact, depending on where the sun is, it looks either blue or purple. Maybe at sunset, it maybe looks a little reddish, just like it would here on Earth. But yes, it's not as red as we think. NASA has been artificially changing the color of the photographs that get released, leading us to believe that it's just red, 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 red. Yeah, it's got a 50-year history of doing that. And that's the thing. NASA's got a 50-year history. I don't like to use the word hiding or they're lying to us. I think it's just something that they'd rather not talk about because they, in all fairness, they are publishing all this stuff to look at. It's not like they're not publishing these photographs, although the way that they're doing it seems sort of suspicious at times. Like, for example, the Curiosity Image Archive online, the public website, they have largely black and white photographs of a lot of these anomalies. I come to find out recently that there's an entire separate database that is accessible through a login and a very complicated interface that actually provides color photographs of these black and white images. You have to dig to find them, but arguably they reveal a whole lot more information about these anomalies than we can see through the black and white low resolution imagery. So, you know, I don't know if you want to say, so I want to be careful with how I characterize NASA's actions, because if I start pointing the finger too hard at NASA, then people are going to become distrustful of me saying, oh, he's just a conspiracy nut and NASA's the enemy. Like, no.
Trust me, you are far from the conspiracy now. You are.
Well, you guys know that.
Yeah.
You know, you guys know that. And look, I really appreciate.
You know what? NASA can turn the tables on you too very easily and say, hey, you're, or any of the professionals at NASA can turn the tables easily, because I mean, they could be Eurocentric and just say, you know, this guy right here, you know, he's not with us on this subject, and just, you know, he's just conspiracy theorist. And once again, here you go, you fall into that category along with everybody else, and you don't want to go into that category.
Yeah, we have to fix the mistakes made in the past. We can't go too far into conspiracy or territory. Although there is a conspiracy, there's you might have seen in the film, there's this thing called the Brookings Report, which was developed for the initiation of the agency we now call NASA, which basically says, hey, look, if you find any alien artifacts out there in the solar system, which you probably will, think very hard about whether or not you want to tell people about it. So this has probably been institutionalized to some degree, and they're probably still running that playbook, as evidenced by the fact that they're not making a big deal about these finds. That's why we credit these Mars researchers. And by the way, if you guys want to cover more on your show about Mars, if you want to look more at pyramids, you know, I would highly recommend a few different people to you, because they could probably go into greater detail about their work. Yeah. You know, I sort of just skim the surface and get the best of the best and stick it out there. But, you know, people like John Ward and Gary find amazing things. But anyway, we can talk about that later. But, you know, it's their work that they're putting in the time to go sift through all these images. NASA just publishes them without any context, without any type of commentary or analysis. They just publish them, leaving it to the public to say, hey, look, there's something weird in this photograph. I'm going to post it online and give my interpretation of what it is I'm finding. Now, it then gives NASA an easy way to say, hey, you know what? You know, we didn't think there was anything to it. We don't know this one random guy in South Africa, let's say. So there's nothing to see here, folks. Don't worry about it. And then that immediately dismisses anything and marginalizes that independent researcher. And so I think that, you know, the work of these guys, it hasn't really been given a fair shake, because NASA keeps throwing shade their way. And unfortunately, it's this David and Goliath scenario. So that's why I really feel like there needs to be this unified front of Mars disclosure and show that there is something serious that the public needs to understand here. And it's not just a joke. And that's the thing. Things go viral here and there all the time, but it just peters out that week. Like, you know, the cylinder or the three-sided pyramid, they went viral a month ago. And then by the end of the week, it's gone and it's forgotten from people's memory. And the thing that I'm trying to stress is that, look, this is more than just tabloid story of the week here with regards to these anomalies that we find. There is maybe no one single piece of evidence is going to be enough to move the needle for people, but it's when you look at the story in totality, the totality of evidence, that it paints this very different picture of Mars. And that's the story, man. It's like, look, we've got a planet next door to us that's got life on it right now, and it had intelligence there in the past. That's an incredible story, in my opinion. That's worth telling.
Yeah, it's crazy you say that, because we look at archaeological places here on planet Earth, and we can say, yo, because of what we see, the structures, the artifacts. So when I say artifacts, like I've seen artifacts of some type, like a statue looking type individual on Mars. I've seen pictures of that. I mean, I don't know how accurate a lot of these pictures are, but a lot of them do come from NASA, to say the least. But you see this stuff, and here on Earth, you would say, yo, that was a civilization. On Mars, they don't even care. And it's just like, how can you be so into digging, be into archaeology, history, geology, and so on and so forth, and not be able to say, hey, I can see through this picture that that's something that's not natural, right? And this is how it works here on Earth. When you want somebody to come see an artifact in your country, you send that person an email with pictures. It sparks that person's curiosity. That email, they're like, oh man, dang, these some nice ass pictures. You know what I mean? Let me take a flight out there and see it in person. Mm-hmm. Seeing it in person is what gave them that proof. That evidence that they received in that email guided them to the proof of that location, and they got the proof by being boots on ground. We can't do that right now in Mars because of the simple fact of our technology. But that evidence that there is something out there when it's time to get boots on ground out there, those are locations and points of interest people need to visit.
But I think what would go a long way is, say, for instance, we're examining a photograph with what appears to be arguably a pyramid on Mars. Mm-hmm. My question is, does NASA have any archaeologists on staff that are looking at Mars? They might have archaeologists on staff that are looking at things on Earth, but are they looking at things on Mars? And are they allowed to see anything other than just geological formations is the next question. And so far, I don't have any evidence. I don't have any reason to suspect that Mars is actually looked at with anything other than a lens of geology or weather. So, and with regards to these ancient artifacts here on Earth, or ancient sites here on Earth, we have this battle now with traditional archaeology, where the emerging narrative is we had an ancient intelligent civilization here on Earth that was wiped out, and humanity got sent back to the Stone Ages and had to rebuild, and that rebuilding is what we know as history. But there was probably a whole lot of prehistory that we're just kind of unaware of. But we see these structures that we can't explain. We see these artifacts that seem to be so old that they defy explanation. So we have that current struggle here on Earth with getting archaeologists to understand that there was a previous civilization, perhaps even tens of thousands of years ago, maybe even earlier. That is too much of a leap for them. And so when you add Mars on top of that, I mean, they have even less of a reason to be interested in that, because they're still debating this terrestrial archaeological area of contention. So getting people's focus on Mars is a tall order, because first we do have this tremendous task of getting people to understand that the Egyptian pyramids, A, are not tombs, and that B, there's all these ancient sites with all these megalithic blocks that we don't know how they were put together, really. I mean, it's just moving these large stones, so there must have been some intelligence in the distant past that we have no idea what happened to these people. And
I guarantee you somebody knows. They just ain't telling us. I mean, that's high tech information, man.
Yeah.
Finding the people, that's the thing. Finding the people that do know, and the disclosure is the other thing.
We ain't gonna get that. I don't think we'll get to it anytime in our lifetime, but I do think that you're the foundation. And when I say you being the foundation, is that
you never know.
You're bringing everybody in the community together. Like that's what it's just like somebody in a family. Like there's somebody in the family that brings the whole family together, no matter what, right? It could be a grandfather, a grandma, it could be a mother, father, it could be anybody. But you're the guy because you give credit to the people that deserves it, and then you talk to people like me and Fat Jesus who have. I know you said my following count was big, but I'm not on the level as some of these other people out here, and you still took the time to talk to me. I mean, you could have had the choice from anybody. So we
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we do.
And of course, dude. So that anyone takes interest in this stuff is of great importance to me. So, I'm not looking down on anybody. Anyone who's taking Mars disclosure seriously, I want to embrace that. So like this is a lot of fun. I'm happy you reached out, of course.
Yeah, it is fun because, like I said, I've been hearing about this since I was a little kid. I knew about the face on Mars, and then I got into the mythology, and then I hear different stories about, these individuals coming from Mars. And like I said, Alelu, who is supposed to be, it was before the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki comes from the word Anu, the top dog, the god that took over Alelu. But Alelu was the one that was in charge at first. Then Alelu and Anu had a fight. Then Anu took over. But Alelu supposedly is supposed to have his face on Mars. That's where the face of Mars is supposed to represent, according to those people who are in that field. Not saying everybody, but there are certain groups of people who believe that. And that's what struck my interest for Mars, was the simple fact that not only did I see face on Mars and that I'm interested in UFOs and extraterrestrials and all this other stuff, but also because of the simple fact that they had mythology that talked about it. And those happen at different time frames. When I was a little kid is when I seen the face on Mars. The mythology didn't happen until I got much older. You know what I mean? And that it took years for it to basically, it was almost like a stepping stone. Okay, I got hit with Mars possibility. You get all these different ideas, Stargate. I mean, you seen SG1 and stuff like that, all these ideas and stuff like that, the show, the movie, and so on and so forth. So you get these in TV shows, movies, and so on and so forth, but they don't really go into detail in it. So like I said earlier, you got to go to different places to pick out the thing. It's almost like going to the library back in the 80s and 90s and having to go through the index cards to find a book that you want. You know what I mean? It's almost like that hard of a work to do it. And now we got to the point where I'm gonna say you and your team are bringing all this information where it's almost accessible by just clicking on a link, and you have a source. You can read it. You can get the data. You can get the pictures. And you can even speak to you personally on X and social media and YouTube and so on and so forth. So if anybody wants information, you would be the go-to guy, I would say. Like if somebody says, hey, who's the go-to guy for Mars? I would be like, yo, Brian is. And I say that with just like how I would say Dolores Cannon would be for a hypnotist. Like anybody that, there's other ones out there and there were people before her. But because I've read many of her books, I know her style, and I know that people also recommended her, so I know that she's legit. Just like you're legit. You got your documentary. I've seen you on other podcasts. I've been watching your stuff from other people. I know your work, and I've seen what you do. So I am confident enough to say that, hey, if somebody says, hey, can you give me some information on Mars? I'm like, yo, Brian is the one you want to go to. He'll lead you to whatever you want from that point on. But that's the guy that I want to tell you because I can remember his name and I spoke to him. It's much easier. You mentioned other people. I can't really remember them. And I'm not a name type of a person. I'm more of a seeing somebody's first face. So it's easier for me to remember somebody because of their face. So that's another thing that we have to do in this social media world, is also use what we know from other people. Not everybody's going to remember somebody's name, so you got to put a picture to the face type thing, you know what I'm saying? Or picture to the name type thing. So yeah, we've been at an hour and 30 minutes. I try to keep it in between that time. I really would like to have another conversation with you. I want to actually, what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, and I would like to follow your comments for the next, I don't know, month or so, and see what people say to you, and I'll go do my research on what they say, and then see if me and you and Jesus can have a conversation on that, because they won't be able to communicate it with you, right? Like, I've seen people don't communicate with you. They throw something out. I bet you don't know about this, Brian. I've seen people say that to you. And that would throw me off too. I'd be like, man, I'm not even gonna waste my time with this idiot. You know what I'm saying? Especially when, you know, it's not worth it. Especially when the first thing they do is assume something. Like Jesus said, a lot of people assume things about you. And I don't like assuming things about anybody. That's why I ask a lot of questions. Okay, well, when did I say that? Or when did this happen? Give me some context. So yeah, I would definitely love to have another conversation if you're willing.
Hey, I know we're up on the last part of this and everything. If you throw up my screen real quick for shits and giggles. If you remember Total Recall, the 3-tit lady.
That's funny.
That's where they got it from.
That's from Mars?
Yeah, that's Mars.
Yeah, that is
that's
Mars.
The 3 mountains.
Nice.
I was wondering where they got the 3-tit from, and sure enough.
Dude, that's awesome. That's a nice connection there.
I was like, where did they get this idea of 3 tits? I was like, oh my gosh.
Got a little hype now, can I let it die down? I remember days in the trench. Time to go hard then, time to go all in, time to get my all to this shit. Panamera maxed out, first class flights out, Atlantic to Pacific, yeah, it's lit.